I'm very excited to be here because this is really a continuation of something we did a year ago. My name is Dr. April Dirks-Spies, and I'm a social work professor here at Mount Mercy. And one thing we're trying to do, of course, is increase the diversity of our students, and it has been amazing. I've seen a big change. I've seen some faculty in the room in the past 7 years since I've been here. And we did a wonderful project last year where a social work student and I went out and interviewed folks in the community about what it was like to be a Black professional in Cedar Rapids. We interviewed 11 people. I want to say there were mostly, a little bit over half were men, and the rest were women, and it was just fascinating. And what we found, was anyone here last year for that presentation? Anyone in the room? Okay. What we found was that people were really happy to be in Cedar Rapids, that they were really happy to be in the corridor, that there were all these opportunities. And in fact, I found out one of the engineers, Will Hill, that was on the panel last year from Rockwell Collins has since moved to Florida, and I thought I couldn't believe it because he was so happy here in Cedar Rapids. But what we wanted to do this year, Dimashi Gutierrez is on campus now as a graduate LMFT student, but also multicultural coordinator. Multicultural affairs. And looking at, let's bring women to campus. Let's celebrate women during Black History Month. So that's what we're doing today. So I am very happy you're all here. And I also noticed there's some folks, there's some students here. I see my social work students. Raise your hands, okay? There's faculty and staff, administration, and there's some alum. Yes, we got a social work alum in the room. I'm very excited. And then there's some other folks here from off campus as well, the whole row of you. So thank you for coming. And I'll turn it over to Maj, who's going to do the introduction. Okay.
Yes, well, as she said, my name is Dimashi Gutierrez. I'm a multicultural graduate assistant for Mount Mercy University. Currently my second year marriage and family therapy. And I'm going to start introductions this way. So right here you have Dr. Shirley Wilson. Dr. Wilson was appointed Associate Dean for Cultural Affairs and Diversity Initiatives in the Carver College of Medicine at the University of Iowa in July of 2012. Her current priorities include leading the revision and implementation of the college strategic diversity plan, implementing a comprehensive training program which focuses on culturally responsive care, and developing pipeline programs for individuals from populations which have been historically underrepresented in medicine and biomedical research centers. Dr. Wilson's prior professional experience includes position at Indiana University, Purdue University, Indianapolis, as a director of multicultural professional development. She's special assistant to the chancellor, where she led a review of the institution's hiring practices, and assistant dean of the faculties. With a focus on the recruitment and retention of faculty from less represented populations. She has received grant funding for a cultural competence curriculum development project, a faculty leadership development program, and a faculty writing success program. Dr. Wilson also has authored several pieces on diversity in higher education. Her most recent publication is a chapter entitled "They Forgot Mammy Had a Brain" in the book Presumed Incompetent: The Intersections of Race and Class for Women in Academia, which you actually have the chapter over here in these chairs. So if you want to come over after the program is done and pick up a chapter and read over it, and there's also PowerPoint slides correlating to the topic of that chapter. So Dr. Wilson also has a BS degree in speech pathology and audiology from Ball State University, a MS degree in college student personal administration and counseling from Indiana University, and a PhD in educational leadership and policy studies, higher education administration from IU. She also completed a diversity and inclusion certificate program for healthcare executives through the Association of American Medical Colleges and Georgetown University 2013. It's very impressive. And our next to her, we have Dr. Ruth White. She has a PhD in American Studies from the University of Iowa, dissertation autoethnography and the sense of self in the novels of Toni Morrison, bachelor's and master's degrees in English from Southern Illinois University, former director of the Iowa Department of Human Rights, retired educator, Cedar Rapids Community School District, 23 years as humanities and advanced placement English instructor, and academic advisor to minority students at Washington High School. She's been an independent consultant, educational diversity and cultural competence, and executive director Academy for Scholastic and Personal Success, which is a program for high school and elementary school students of color. Also an innovator for TAP, or Toward Advanced Placement, a curricular choice for minority freshmen and sophomores. She's currently serving on the Diversity Focus and Red Eye Boards of Directors of the Greater Cedar Rapids Community Foundation Grants Committee and the Cedar Rapids Civil Rights Commission. She's been a keynote speaker at the 2012 Remembering Martin at the Martin Luther King Luncheon. She's been a consultant, TransWeb Global. She's currently married to George R. Pope, Chicago, Illinois. She is grandparent of Travell, age 11. And she's a reader, thinker. She loves theater, dance, film, and she's a would-be writer. So, and next to her, we have Bashiba Mays, which some of you may recognize as the Mount Mercy University Graduate Assistant for Area Coordinator for Regina Residence Hall. She's alumni of North Central College in the Chicagoland area, graduated in 2013. She received her BA in Organizational Communications, Sociology, and Environmental Studies. Shiva has a passion for nonprofit organizations, traveling abroad, environmental and social justice issues, and the Sour Patch Kids candy. So Shiva is a firm believer in the idea of never settling for less, and kindness will get you far. And her own experiences range from camp counselor, teaching English in West African countries, organic food grower and activist, to be a teacher's assistant to special needs children. Today, Shiva serves in the 2-year graduate assistant program at Mount Mercy University while working and getting her master's of strategic leadership degree. She enjoys spending time in her spare time Shiva enjoys spending time volunteering as an assistant track and field jump coach for the Mount Mercy University Mustangs. And right next to her, we have Shamika Outlaw. She is a native of Jacksonville, Florida. Shamika completed her Bachelor's of Science degree with a double major in Criminology and Sociology at Florida State University in 2009. And her master's degree in business administration with a concentration in supply chain at Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University in 2011. Shamika relocated to Memphis, Tennessee in February of 2012 after being recruited as a business process specialist within the global supply chain at International Paper, where in addition to her systems focused role, she worked to implement International Paper's operating model at paper mills and box plants across the United States. In September 2014, Shamika relocated to Cedar Rapids after accepting a position as the facility buyer for the Cedar River Paper Mill, where she helps oversee approximately $9.5 million in annual spending to support the operations and maintenance of the 24-hour-a-day facility. Shamika is also an independent beauty consultant with Mary Kay, where she is focused on helping her customers look and be their best. When not hard at work, Shamika has a passion for volunteering in her church and in the community. She enjoys working with others and being able to share God's love in the process. She is the first person in her family to graduate with a college degree and enjoys speaking to youth and sharing her educational and life experience with them. And next to her we have Kanika Lee. And Kanika Lee is a professional within the field of higher education and student affairs. Kanika is from New York and is passionate about student development and engagement. She graduated from Canisius College in Buffalo, New York, with an MS in college student professional administration. Kanika has had experience working with fraternities and sororities, student activities, residence life, retention initiatives, diversity, multicultural affairs, and community involvement, and advertising. Kanika is an active member of the American College Personnel Association and Iowa Student Personnel Association. Then we have Kendra Malone. Kendra coordinates the Safe Zone project and provides support for various Chief Diversity Office initiatives. Kendra earned a Bachelor of Arts degree in Cultural Anthropology from the University of Iowa and a Master's degree in Cultural Anthropology and Women's Studies from Iowa State University. Kendra is an active member of the Women of Color Advisory Network, a statewide group of professional women of color committed to ending violence in our communities. Kendra has a breadth of experience developing and providing cultural competency training with a particular focus on communities of color, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer communities, anti-sexual violence, and community empowerment. And she works at the University of Iowa. And next to her, we have Yvette Creighton. Yvette has been a diversity program manager for Rockwell Collins since March 2012, where she assists in the workplace efforts of the diversity and inclusion strategy by providing ongoing guidance to 8 employee resource groups. Prior to Rockwell Collins, Creighton was employed at ACT Inc. for almost 4 years. There, she established a diversity and inclusion strategy, developed retention programs, and managed a diversity committee. Her work paved the way for an integrated diversity and inclusion program for the ACT organization. Creighton is an active member of her community where she serves on the board of directors for the African American Museum of Iowa and is an associate pastor at Faith Temple Baptist Church in Waterloo, Iowa. Creighton also assists in the coordination of initiatives of the Employee Resource Group Consortium. Did I say that right? A collaborative group of community members and employers working to create a more inclusive community. In her spare time, Creighton blogs for the Real Moms of Eastern Iowa and mentors women and girls through her organization, Beauty LLC. Creighton completed her coursework for her master's degree in industrial organizational psychology at the University of Northern Iowa, where she also completed her bachelor's degree in psychology. And then we have Shauna Clemente. Shauna originally began her academic journey in hopes of becoming an athletic trainer. She soon shifted her career path after spending a semester tutoring student athletes, many of which were her fellow teammates. Her passion and interest in supporting students in their academic journey has certainly grown, and under the mentorship of her former advisor and now dearest friend, Shauna has dedicated the last 20 years of her life to working with and supporting students at every age level. Once a lead teacher for a preschool that served low-income families, a Spanish and reading instructor for an inner-city alternative grade school, and an ESOL faculty member helping native Spanish speakers strengthen their English speaking, writing, and reading skills, Shauna is currently part of the Mount Mercy University community, where she serves as coordinator for student success and oversees a new academic success program. Shauna holds a degree in English and American literature and a minor in both women's and cultural studies, and certainly enjoys teaching college composition whenever she has the opportunity. But whether she's lecturing in the classroom or giving a presentation to incoming first-generation students, Shauna finds a way to reach out to students and let them know she cares. Her deepest desire is to help students, regardless of age, ability, income level, or background, gain access to resources, ensure that they are all making a seamless transition into the university culture, as well as help them develop the skills they need to be successful in academics. Okay, so the way that this panel can work, I have some questions here that the panelists can answer, but I think it'd be wonderful if you all have a question as the audience to raise your hand when we're under a specific topic, and to go ahead and ask them a question. Okay? Okay. So anyone have a question right now? Okay. I'll start out with mine. So how did you get to where you are today? It's been a long journey, that's for all of you, so what has it been like?
Are we going down the line?
Whoever wants to answer first, or you go down the line.
So I can start first. Would you like to?
For me, you know, you sometimes anticipate what you want to be when you grow up, right? You kind of think you know what you want to be, and sometimes your career doesn't always take you down that path. And I had the opportunity of doing an internship through CDC. I studied psychology as an undergrad, and I thought I wanted to be a clinical psychologist. had an opportunity to get some hands-on experience in that space and realized that it wasn't really a great fit for me. And so I ended up going down a different path, knew I wanted to work with people and really understand how people kind of work and to assist them in their growth and really empower them. And so that's how I ended up in industrial organizational psychology, really studying human behavior within the workplace. And as a result, one thing led to another. Knew I wanted to be in human resources, ended up there and had the pleasure of working under some individuals that saw a lot of my potential and invested in that. And the next thing I knew, I was kind of in this diversity space where I am now. Always knew I wanted to kind of root for the underdog, and so that's sort of how I ended up in this space, and it's been a natural, good fit. But it certainly wasn't something that I knew I wanted to do when I was in 5th grade, 6th grade, 12th grade, or even, a senior in college. It just sort of happened, and I think that as students, particularly to the students, you have to be open to kind of where your career path takes you and be willing to allow that natural progression, because you may end up in a space that you hadn't even realized was your passion.
I can build on that. I definitely agree that the career path will not be a straight line, and I think some of us start out thinking that it will be, and it will be lockstep. For me, I did practice as a speech pathologist for about 8 years. And while I was doing that, I enjoyed it, but I was also thinking, I don't know if I want to do specifically this for the rest of my life. And because I was practicing, this was in Indianapolis, in the school system, it meant that I would need to have a permanent teaching license in order to do it. So I was already thinking about graduate school anyway. But I thought, this is an opportunity to really think about what does the next phase look like for me. And so originally I thought I would do educational psychology, because I've always been sort of interested in what makes people tick. But as I looked into some of the programs that were close by, they weren't really doing what I wanted to do. And I actually stumbled onto this major called College Student Personnel Administration, and found out I could combine that with career counseling. And because I was struggling with my own career, I got really interested in career counseling. And so at the core of who I am, I really am truly a career counselor and a career coach. And I continue actually to do a lot of that kind of work. I was just at Northwestern last week, where I led a workshop that looked at styles of influence and related to Myers-Briggs, because I really enjoy that kind of work. So through the course of getting my master's degree, I actually did an internship, and I am huge on internships because it can tell you so much, but it also gives an employer or a potential employer an opportunity to try you out. So I had to do an internship as part of my master's program, and actually did it in a university career center at IUPUI, which is the short name for Indianapolis, Indiana University of Indianapolis, which actually at one point was a Jeopardy question, by the way. So anyway, but doing that internship did a couple of things for me, because I knew I wanted to shift course a little bit. And as much as I enjoyed speech pathology, and honestly still use some of those principles, diagnose a problem, come up with a therapy plan, implement it. But I wanted to shift gears, and on paper, for some people thinking, how does someone go from being a speech pathologist to a career counselor? Well, I thought, to me, there was a lot of application, but some people won't see that. But having done my internship in the career center there, I applied for a position with hundreds of other people, and I actually got the job. And I do think the internship had a lot to do with that. So that was my entree into higher education, and I've never looked back. And I actually remember when I was making that shift, my mom, who was living at the time, she was really concerned because I was going to take a cut in salary, and I tell people all the time, sometimes you have to do that. Now you have to decide how much of a cut. But it was worth it to me to take a cut in salary, and I think it was like $1,000 difference, to move into a different space, and it opened up so many doors for me. I had an opportunity to teach, to do training and development, And I have to say, when I finished my master's degree, I remember my advisor saying, when are you going to go on for your PhD? And I was like, go away. You know, I love school, but I was just done. And I didn't think I would go on, honestly, for a PhD. But as and we can talk about this piece later as well, as I was moving up in the university, I found out that I could only go so far if I didn't have the PhD. And so I started thinking about that piece, and I had mentors who really encouraged me to go on. And so having that piece helped tremendously. And I remember seeing a cartoon that said, a PhD is the best form of feminine protection. I hope that doesn't offend anybody. I thought that was great. And I do think in higher education for women especially, we have to give ourselves every advantage. And that again opened up more doors for me. And often, I think sometimes people see things in us that we don't often see in ourselves, and I kept being tapped for, we'd like you to do this, and we'd like you to try this, and there were some things that I resisted and didn't want to do. Coming to Iowa in particular and coming to this position was one, I have to say, that I had resisted. I actually had stayed away from diversity work. And that's primarily because some of the people that I saw doing it, I thought, this doesn't make any sense. And it didn't seem to have any kind of science or theory behind it. And then I began to learn about ways to do this kind of work in a way that can be very meaningful. So that helped tremendously. Now, I never thought I would end up in Iowa. I have to say, as a matter of fact, when I was being recruited, I literally said, I'm not going to Iowa because there are no black people there. But I found out differently. So that's a little bit about how I got to kind of the space where I am now.
Well, building on a little bit of what both of the previous speakers have shared, my early life was pretty lockstep, and it wasn't until I was grown and professional that I began to stumble. But as I look back, I'm beginning to see my life in chapters, and I can see that everything led to now. I wanted to be a dancer when I was a little girl, and we grew up in a place where we were the first and only black people in the town, so the idea of being single and solitary is not foreign to me at all, which is one of the reasons that I could be here. But when I realized that it was not likely that I would end up on the stage in New York City, I became an English major. I liked to read, always excelled in things that had to do with English and reading and interpretation and writing and that kind of thing. So it was a natural kind of progression for me to become an English major. I got a scholarship, and my father said, he said, it was a scholarship for education. I said, I don't want to be a teacher. He said, you take the money. And so I took the money and became an English major, and the natural progression then was to find some place to teach. And so I had my first teaching experience in Gary, Indiana, which, if you know anything about Gary, you might look at me and say, what in the world? How did you end up there? But I cut my teaching teeth there in, I think, probably one of the most difficult situations possible, and learned quite a bit, survived that, married, and because of the marriage, moved from Indiana to Illinois. And this was back in the time when race relations were pretty volatile. And so we were hired in Kankakee as what was termed as firefighters. So there was a lot of violence in those schools in Kankakee, Illinois, which you might not presume. And so that's why we were there, to kind of add a little color to the landscape. So it was from there that we moved here. And for me, it was like almost full circle, going from Rantoul, where we were the only ones, to Cedar Rapids, where we were almost the only ones. And that phrase, you know, why would you go to Iowa? There are no black people there. I have heard over and over and over and over, and there are a few of us. And so was able to use the strategies, which really weren't strategies, they were just survival, that I learned growing up in this teaching career in Cedar Rapids, where, again, we were among a very few people of color. So I had a little bit of experience teaching middle school and thought, oh my goodness, it takes a special person to teach middle school, that age group. I can remember being 13. I didn't like it. I don't think 13-year-olds like it now. And that was not where I fit. So high school was good for me. College was good for me. And I taught for a long, long time at Washington High School and really enjoyed that experience teaching bright kids and not so bright kids. The academic advisor to minority students position was created when my principal asked me if I would do it. I said, what is that? He said, I don't know, you figure it out. And so I did, and that put me in line with many, many students of color who were not reaching their potential for reasons that had nothing to do with their capability. And that experience led me to the program that I formulated and lead today, which is the Academy for Scholastic and Personal Success, which uses cultural competence and cultural information to help young people understand that they do have capabilities and can do more than they think they can. So that program was 25 years old last year, and I'm looking at succession planning, but I won't leave it until it can stand on its own 2 feet.
Okay, I'll go. Well, how I got here is a very unique and interesting story. I'll start from the beginning. When I was younger, I went to a boarding school in Chicago. A lot of people, usually what happens is when you're in a situation that your parents can't take care of you, like DCFS or whatnot, they'll take you away from your parents. Mine was the opposite. My mom saw an opportunity to give me and my siblings a chance to go to a school that took care of us, and we would get a scholarship once we graduated from high school. So she gave us up to be able to go to that school so that we can graduate and get our bachelor's and master's and continue on. So I went to the school with my siblings until I graduated. I was there from first grade till my senior year. We did get to see her. It wasn't like I couldn't see her, you know, but I went home on vacations and whatnot. But that was like my home. I only knew that area, so I wouldn't really want to go home if I didn't know anyone that was at my mom's apartment complex or whatnot. So I just ended up staying there over the summers, and now my friends, like, we know each other. I grew up with them. We stayed in the same class, so I graduated with 28 people, and they're like my brothers and sisters. So it was you know, it was really cool, and that's kind of a little bit how I got to where I am now. I did end up graduating from that school called Mooseheart. And then I went to North Central College, which is in Chicago, the Chicagoland area. And I got my BA in Organizational Communication. I think the reason why I was so interested in communication and sociology and environmental issues was because I grew up in a place that people cared about me and they didn't know my background story, they didn't know where I came from, and so I wanted to give back. I would not be here at all if I did not go to that school. I would not have gotten my BA if I did not go to that school, my high school, elementary, whatever. So in terms of me wanting to give back, I did end up applying for the Peace Corps, and I got accepted. And I went to West Africa. I was in Sierra Leone, and I came back in April, May, one of those. And I don't know if some of you guys know, but the Ebola issue happened when I was there, when I was serving, and so I had to come back. So I was a part of that, and I came back and I was like, oh my God. I was only there for 2.5 months, and I was supposed to be there for 2 years. I changed my bank accounts, I changed my address, like I changed my whole life. And the apartment that I was living in, I didn't have it, so when I got back, I had nowhere to go. Not one place to go. My mom didn't have enough room for me in her apartment. My aunt didn't have room for me coming back. My little cousin took my room. That was supposed to be my room. So like it was just, you know, like I'm like, oh, we've been gone for 2 months. You already took up my room. Like, so you know, so luckily because of what I believe in about kindness will get you far. Everyone knew me from North Central College, and then people from my actual high school were willing to take me in and like let me, you know, sleep on their couch or do, you know, whatever I had to do to get back on my feet. And then I had the luxury of actually knowing some people who are not working here at Mount Mercy, President Heatman. And it's all about the people, not just about who you know, but people who know you. I think that is so important. And Mount Mercy was looking for a graduate assistant for a residence life, and they ended up calling North Central, and one of the ladies knew me, and she was like, you know what, Sheila's back, and she's looking for a place to go. And I got the phone call, had my interview, and that is how I am here today, and I am so blessed.
I think you guys have.
Yeah.
Any questions for us? For Dimaji? That's the next one.
Oh, go ahead. How do you guys like stay motivated to keep doing what you're doing?
Okay, you guys hear me?
Hello? Okay. For me, it was hard, the transition of going from being a college student and then a professional. And so I'm the type of person where I'm in residence life and intercultural life, so sometimes students will still knock on my door and get me. But I've learned now it's important to set those types of boundaries and make sure that I make time for my partner. I have a dog too, so make sure I pay attention to him. But also looking at self-care and kind of my own health. And so I make it a priority now to work out, try and eat healthy. I have this little wristband on because I'm in meditation right now with our spiritual life office, kind of really focusing on myself and kind of getting myself centered. So I think it's important for you to kind of block out that time and really make sure you're focusing on you.
I'm not from Cedar Rapids, so I've only been here for about 4 months, so it's a little bit hard for me to keep motivating myself to stay here, and you know, and my support system, like I said, is huge, humongous, and so just calling people and I'm getting used to Cedar Rapids, you know, I gotta go around and get used to going to Walmart, where is Walmart at? And like every time I go out, I'm learning something new about Cedar Rapids, so you just kind of gotta, if you're away from your support system, you have got to find a way to become more independent yourself and figure out how to be an adult. And I'm in that transition right now from my undergrad to being an adult here and professional at Mount Mercy University.
I think that I know that my motivation comes from my faith. I believe, as these ladies earlier answered the question, how did they get here? I believe that everything is a part of God's plan for your life, and that I'm supposed to be here right now at this moment on this panel. And so my motivation is knowing that this is a part of a grand scheme that sometimes seems very foreign to me, but it is for the benefit and the bettering of myself and in the community that I'm in. So my motivation definitely comes from that and trusting that it will all work out.
As an educator, my motivation comes from need. It's easy to look around and see what the need is and how great the need is. And the students that I have come into contact with over the years have had that same issue, the issue of motivation, whether it be motivation to finish an assignment, you know, or motivation to take the next step. And sometimes that correlates with courage and pulling, you know, from your inner resources. I used to always, well, they called me the vocabulary queen at Washington High School because I would I would just talk, and some of the words I used people didn't understand, and so they said, what's that mean? But I also used my parents who are both deceased, but are with me all the time. And my mom she had so many sayings and cliches that we didn't understand when she was using them, but now I use them with students. And then of course I made up some of my own. But, you know, in the academy we use phrases like you stand on the shoulders of your ancestors. So you're not here for no reason. You're here because somebody who came before you made a way so that you can be here where you are today. So I think that's important to acknowledge and to remember. And also, you know, there's always more to know. And so when you're pulling from that center, that inner place, even though you don't want to visit it, you can make yourself know that there's more for you to know. And so the job that you have to do is important. It's important for you. It's important for what you produce can give to the world. And so I think it's really important for all students, but in particular students of color, to develop that motivational muscle, if you will, and just not let yourself lay down, because it's, you know, anything worth doing is worth doing well. That's another cliche. That's what I've always used to motivate myself. And, you know, I will try not to talk about how old I am, but it's something that never goes away. You know, there's always something for you to do. There's always a challenge that you have to face or confront, and there's always an opportunity for you to pull from that spot that you don't think you have.
So one of the things that motivates me is the core principle that I try to live my life by is that there's beauty in the struggle. The foundation of the work that I do in the Chief Diversity Office at the University of Iowa is helping people to challenge oppression and the biases that they carry. And doing that is not an easy task. And so what constantly motivates me is remembering that as we have difficult conversations about why we need to have panels like this and why we have to have diversity initiatives, I constantly remember that being able to do this work is a gift, and that there are so many people, like all of the panelists sitting here, that are doing great work, that I'm continuously inspired, you know, by the other women that do this work, but then also by the fact that being able to regularly have conversations about identity and self-reflection and what that means for how you do the work that you do, whatever that may be, inspires me then to come back the next day and continue to have the hard dialogue around issues related to identity and discrimination and oppression within institutions.
I want to add something as well. For me, I also think my motivation is my education, because no one can take that degree away from you. And so knowing that I have that, and kind of knowing where I'm also working on my master's in human resources management, and so knowing that I'm getting those skill sets is something that I know that continues to motivate me.
I think that's a very insightful question to ask. And, you know, coming from a corporate environment where it's very conservative, there are so many challenges in a corporate environment when you're trying to navigate that environment, and when you want to be successful, that you can become very easily disengaged if you don't know how to successfully survive. I mean, really, you know, you guys have heard of those, you know, books and theories around survival of the savvy and things like that, where you have to be equipped and savvy in order to be successful in a corporate environment. So there is definitely opportunity to become disengaged. I think one of the things that motivates me, there are several things. You know, I align myself with mentors within the organization that will tell me the truth, that will keep it real. So I have those mentors, and then I have others that, you know, serve as sponsors and advocates on my behalf to kind of empower me and uplift me and encourage me. But at the same time, you know, I also have sort of my family life, where I have two beautiful daughters who one is gonna be 5 in May and the other one will be 2 soon. And they deserve to know that they can do anything and everything they want to do. And it's my responsibility as their mother and as their first role model and image of who they will look like and who they look like to show them that they can accomplish anything. And so that's probably one of the biggest motivators in my life right now. 7 years ago, that wasn't the case, but today that's what it is right now.
One thing I would say in relation to that question is you'll notice that in all the answers, no one said money. And I think it's important to hear that. And I know as a student, especially, I know there are not just students in the room, but sometimes as a student, I think the thinking is, man, if they would just pay me so I'll do anything they want. No, you really won't. You have to have a passion, and you're hearing that, I think, from everyone on the panel, in terms of whatever that work is that you're choosing to do. And you have to really want to do it. And that means you would do it for $30,000 or you do it for $300,000. So I think that's important too.
Well, I mean, listening to all the statements and also to Maji's introduction of each of you and individual biographies, which is fantastic. I was thinking maybe I can change the title of the symposium as Successful Women Symposium. And yet there is, for lack of a better term, there is an additional word there, Black Women Symposium. What does it make to, think about the process that you have been successful, you are successful, you're all professionals, but yet just a few of you talked about the fact that, this is a symposium about quote-unquote Black women. Now, can we say that that no longer is an issue? And so you're just as successful as anyone else. Does gender play a role in where you are and who you are? And does the other terminology also plays a role in who you are, what you become, what you have chosen? And I see, I'm a sociologist, I see a number of sociologists on the panel, which is fantastic.
Technical difficulties. Just kidding, turn it off. There you go. I think that
I think that all of my identities will intersect. And so there are moments where, yes, I'm a person of color, I can't hide that. So that is gonna be apparent. But there are gonna be days where I had to do a floor meeting to a whole room of young men, and we were talking about sexual assault and some harassment issues in the building. And so I knew that being the only female in the room, I would have to take a different tone and a different stance of how I was gonna approach them. So in that moment, my femininity was coming out, and that was something that I was aware of. There's gonna be times that I understand that being a person that is married, that's gonna come into play. So for your question, I think of intersectionality and how that impacts me, and I think it is important that the symposium have Black in it, because I think Black is beautiful, and I wanna make sure that it's known, and I'm proud of it, and it shouldn't be something that's seen as being wrong. And in the country right now, with a lot of the race issues that we have, it's important to highlight the powerful women that are on this panel, and any figures in society as well.
So I agree with you 100%. I think that oftentimes we want to sweep some things under the rug and act like they did not happen. So for me, it is very powerful and it's very uplifting to know that I can stand for what a successful Black woman might look like. And I also think that it's still very relevant. I work in corporate America in a paper company, and there are not a lot of people that look like me within that paper company. And so I think that the conversation's still happening, that I am just as capable as my Anglo-Saxon male counterpart, is very relevant and still needs to be had, so that our differences can be celebrated and we can all contribute to the company equally. But we don't want to get into a place where we look at each other, or I should say, we're trying to get away from a place where we look at each other and think that we have to avoid those differences rather than allowing them to be what they are and use those gifts in a cohesive environment.
In light of that question, I think some of us struggle with what is the best term. Many of you are using women of color. Some of you use black women. Then there's African American. And I think we struggle with that, knowing we want to do what is right. We want to call you what is proper, and what is it? Or is it?
Or is it, right?
So I think with any identity, there is no one answer. I think you'll get several different answers from all of us based upon how we experience our identity. And so what I recommend that people do who are wanting to be respectful of people of different identities is to listen for how they refer to themselves. Because there is no one way, because communities, regardless of what they are very diverse in themselves. And so some folks, prefer black, some folks prefer African American, some folks prefer just to be called by their name, and so there really is a wide variety of how folks with particular identities refer to themselves and how they refer to their communities. I don't know if other folks want to. Thank you. Please.
I think too, sometimes we can be a little, I want to be very careful how I say this. I think that it's important that we're sensitive to what people's preferences are and that we're respectful of that. But I think at the same time, we can become so uncomfortable because we're so conscientious of being sensitive that we avoid the situation and we avoid the person. And so I think that it's important to note having the dialogue with someone is better than avoiding it altogether. We can become so overly sensitive that we don't even want to interact with each other because we're afraid that we're going to say the wrong thing or do the wrong thing. At the end of the day, we're all people. And it's most important that we're respectful. If we're respectful and mindful of the fact that we're all people, then we won't say things that are inappropriate. But I echo the same thing. Black, African American, it really depends on the person. I don't care. As long as you don't call me out my name, I'm good. So, yeah.
I believe that it's important to acknowledge our history. And because I work with young people, I think it's important to acknowledge that it is because of and through the complications of our history that we have this question. And a lot of young people don't know who they are. And so it's important for them to understand that being of color, being black, being African American, is a beautiful, magnificent thing. Now, if we look around, I think that, and we counted on our two hands, we would see associated with black people or African Americans more negative images in our popular culture than positive. And our young people are inundated with popular images. So it's important for us as women of color and as a society in general who is cognizant of this differential to help young people to see the magnificence of who they are. Now, I don't believe we're post-racial. I don't believe that to avoid this issue does anybody a service. I believe that intelligent people of whatever color or persuasion would welcome an honest dialogue about questions such as these because they help you to learn and they help us to communicate what we feel and what we believe. I'm raising my 11-year-old grandson who is a 6th grader in middle school. And if you think that the issue of color and what a person is called is of no consequence, you couldn't be more wrong. I do the academy for that very reason, and see in my own life the struggles that this little black boy is having as an 11-year-old, and that he will continue to have unless we, as a society, get ourselves together, and that hasn't happened over 400 years. So I believe that it is important for us to have these honest dialogues, and that the issue of what we call ourselves, the fact that this is a black women's symposium is relevant. It would be nice if it were not. Then I could just show you my beauty, and you could realize it and recognize it on your own, but we're not there yet.
Go on there. Can you talk about like stereotypes that you have faced and how you kind of overcame that challenge?
One related to when I was living at my boarding school, and my roommate was white, and her mom did not like the fact that I was her roommate, period. She did not want us living together, and she told her daughter that I was dirty and that it was unacceptable for the school to have us as roommates. That hurt. As a child, I was 7 years old. I had never heard that in my life because I grew up around beautiful people. So for me to go to a school and my first roommate, and our parents teach us no matter what color you are, it doesn't matter, you treat them how you want someone else to treat you. So when I went to that school and she called me dirty and that I had no worth, and I was 7 years old. That affects you until this day, and I still feel it just talking to you, telling you about it. We have to be willing to educate people from ignorance, to know who we truly are, not just our color and what you see. Me and her are best friends today. We stayed as roommates, and her mom, she stood up for me, you know what I'm saying? And that felt so good for her to be like, you know what, Mom, she is a great person, and no matter what you have to say, I'm gonna grow up with her, and I'm gonna be her roommate, and her daughter is my goddaughter. So I think that hurt me a little bit, but it's also our role to be able to stand up to our parents who are teaching us these things and be like, you know what, no, we need to make a change. And we did. So that changed us, and that's gonna change her daughter, because now her godmother is me, and I am of color.
I've really been enjoying this, listening to you, I should say. And actually, my mother said so many beautiful things about me. She talked about the shape of my body, she talked about the shape of my legs, my hair, and just said so many positive things, but never really referred to the color of my skin. And I just thought I was a beautiful girl until I got to junior high school. And it was at that point that I went to an inner city school. It was very diverse there. And so I saw all sorts of students, different backgrounds, colors and shades. And we were just all so beautiful. I didn't think anything of it. Well, then I transferred to a predominantly white high school. And that's when things changed. And that's when I really realized that I was black. And I didn't shave my legs because it wasn't a thing that we did in my house. I didn't shave my legs. And I remember sitting in shorts in the back of the bus. We were going to a track meet or something, I forget now. And I had my legs across the back seat of the bench. And a student said, "Oh my gosh, look at your legs, they're so hairy. Black people don't shave their legs, do they?" And I thought, well, we don't shave our legs in my house. It has nothing to do with the color of my skin. And that's when I started to kind of begin. And then I went through a depression. So I was in junior high school, the only black girl in my classes, the only black girl in the lunchroom, the only black girl on the track team, and I went through a depression. I struggled. And so I stopped eating. I lost so much weight. I was in a dark place, so different than the Sean I am now. I was in such a dark place. But I turned it around because my mother was so supportive and said so many beautiful things about me. So I got past that. Then I go to college. I went to college, and it was fun. I had to find time, but then I went to graduate school, and I wanted to start an English program. And my professor, I was taking a class, learning how to be an instructor. So it was a year-long class, learning so much, and my professor pulled me to the side, and he said, "You're going to struggle as an instructor, as a faculty member, because you're black." He said, "Because you're a woman, and because you're black. You're going to have to go into the classroom," and he gave me tips. He gave me tips on what to do to get the attention and the respect of my students. But he didn't do that for the other students, and I struggled with that. And then throughout my career, I would have professors pull me to the side and say, "I know we're such a pale university, and we need to get more students of color, but we're glad you're here." And then I'd have students come to me thinking I was a nurturer and the mother and the caretaker. "Let's go to Shauna. She's got all the answers. We can help Shauna." Go to her. And so I struggled with that a lot. But I had such a diverse group of friends and family. They supported me, and I got through all that. And, those things kind of fall off your back sometimes. But I really struggled. But surrounding yourself with people who love you, who see you beyond the color of your skin. Finding people who love you, who respect you, who make you laugh, that's important. That's so important.
I want to add to that, and then, I'm sorry, stereotypes, ooh, that's, where do I begin? I'm actually from Iowa, so I actually grew up in Waterloo, Iowa, so there are black people in Iowa. And my husband is also from Iowa, and many of you may know my husband here at Mount Mercy. He assistant coaches for the men's basketball team here, so Coach Creighton is my husband. So you guys, he'll keep me honest if he was here, but so it's interesting because, there are times in your life as a child you go through a lot of things with coming to realize that people treat you differently because of the color of your skin. And that's a very difficult process to go through as a child and come into that reality. But I also think that there's a stage in your life in adulthood where you almost go through that process all over again. And it's been very recent for me. Because I've been having some experiences of late that really have brought a lot of that hurt and pain back up. So I'm going to give you two examples. In September of last year, so not very long ago, my husband called me. He was on his way home from basketball practice, and he would be okay with me sharing the story because I actually blogged about it on the Real Moms of Eastern Iowa, so everybody's read it. But he was coming home from basketball practice, and it happened to be relatively late. And he stopped at Hy-Vee here in Cedar Rapids, and that particular Hy-Vee, has kind of a name for being kind of the black Hy-Vee or whatever you want to call it. And so he was leaving that Hy-Vee, and he called me and informed me that he had been stopped by the police. And it's unfortunate because instead of the reaction being, make sure, instead of it being the right reaction, naturally the tendency is keep your hands low, don't do any sudden movements, don't do anything that's going to, if they have prejudices against you, they're not going to react and it be something very dangerous for you. And so that's what I told him, and I very calmly, we had that conversation. We got off the phone, and later that night, I kind of asked him what happened, and he gave me bits and pieces of it because it's just kind of his temperament. He's very laid back, very caring person, and so he didn't want to provide all the detail. Well, I found out that not only did they pull him over, they also called another car to come, and they had a dog come in, smell the car, made him get out. And was checking for drugs, and they informed him they pulled him over because his tail light was out. And so that morning, we wanted to check the tail light because we wanted to know which tail light was out so we could get the car fixed. And we checked it, and there was no tail light that was out. This was in September. So it frustrates me at times because a lot of times people say that stereotypes and this racism and those things don't exist, but in my world it does. And so I had to get up and put on my happy face, get dressed, go to work, had lots of things going on at work, and all of this is running through my mind. Talk about intersectionality, being a professional woman, being a woman of color, being a mother to brown children, and being a wife and have to go to an environment where I'm interacting with people who look like that police officer, and being required to make a decision to not be bitter, and to act in love in those type of environments. So that was in September. About a year before that, I went to TJ Maxx here in Cedar Rapids, and I had on street clothes. And typically when I have on street clothes, I'm treated a little differently than when I'm dressed up. I had on street clothes, went to TJ Maxx, and I wanted to get my daughter some gold earrings because my kids have sensitive ears. I usually get them from there. And the clerk didn't wait on me. She waited on someone else. She waited on someone else. And then finally, I went up to her and I said, I'd like to look at, some gold earrings for little girls. And she assisted me with that. But before she did, she informed me that they were very, very expensive. The earrings are really, really expensive. And so she didn't come out and say you can't afford the earrings, but there were implications that why would I be at the jewelry counter? The first implication, the first behavior was her not serving me. The second one was her statement. So this was something that happened within the last 2 years. And I say that not to, I'm very, very careful on who I share those stories with because I don't want anyone to feel guilty because of that. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's a reflection of any one community, but I think it's important to educate people that those stereotypes really do exist. And when you have to work and live in a community that doesn't fully embrace who you are, there are added challenges that you're faced with every single day. And I have to make a conscious decision to overcome those things and to allow love to take precedent over bitterness or anger or hurt. And I remember going through a very difficult process in bringing back a lot of those childhood memories where people said very inappropriate things based on one dimension of who I am, and that's the color of my skin. And it's very unfair, but it's very real. So I just wanted to share those because that's a real story and real situation, as all of these are. It's not something that, it's not a expectation, or it's not, it's not something that someone is spectating about or just implying or trying to make assumptions about. It's real. It really happened.
I'll just add quickly. Being in corporate America, I would hope that I am perceived as a professional woman. Being a young-ish corporate America person, oftentimes I'm not married, I don't have any children, so I'm often looking for friends. And I try to be conscious of the fact that we all have different backgrounds, but what I find is that despite not knowing my background, people often assume that my background is one pretty colorful one, but just is not my story. And I find that the way that they relate to me is based on something that has nothing to do with me, but a preconceived notion of who I am. The thing that really grinds my gears is people addressing me and thinking that they can give me this urban speak that they think that I speak. It's like, no, my mom didn't allow me to speak that way. So I think that as we relate to one another, going further on what you suggested, when you're trying to figure out how do I address you, if I'm going to address you, address me like you would talk to anybody else. And then if I give you some indicators of some different things along the way, then maybe you can adjust your tone or maybe even the slang that you use with me, but don't make an assumption of how you think I'm going to speak or who I am or what my story is based on the color of my skin. That's the most awkward experience that I've had, because then I have to decide whether or not I'm going to laugh it off and let you just get away with it, or if I'm going to address it, which is very uncomfortable for me. And I don't think that's fair.
Can I just add something real quickly? It's interesting to me that I'm sitting next to Sheba here, and I'm not sure how many generations, I keep saying that, I'm talking about but it's relevant. How many generations there are between Sheba and me? But I had the same experience that she just recounted when I was a little girl. And so time has not erased that. There are still young people going through what I went through back in the day. And she's one of them. And my grandson is one of them, a different generation. In terms of the stereotype around speech, I have been tapped for I can't tell you how many things. And the qualifier is, well, Ruth, you're so articulate. And I say to people, and I don't stop being articulate, but I say, if you want me to do whatever it is, then find another reason. Don't tell me I'm articulate as though that's something unusual. My mother was articulate. She taught me how to speak articulately. Why is that something that is worth making special? And so, you know, I am a teacher always, and I might teach you something this evening in the same way that I teach students who were in my classes. And so the idea of having this kind of exchange so that you can hear some of these stories, I think, is extremely instructional. And it comes very, very close to home with my husband, who lives in Chicago, and the conversations that we have around race, which are always in my family. Race comes up all the time when we get together and have conversations. But he said to me once, "You don't know what it's like to be a black man." And, you know, I thought about that. Been working with black people all my life, been black all my life. And I had never intuited that distinction. And I don't have a clue as to what it's like to be a black man. And so he taught me something. And in the same way that I think we may be teaching you something when you ask questions like, is black relevant in the title of this symposium, or what should we call you? Because, and I just say what I'm thinking, you can't know unless you are what it's like to be, just as I can't know what it's like to be a black man pulled over by the police for no good reason.
The piece I wanted to add is, and in thinking about stereotypes, certainly I've had people say to me, well, you're not like the other black people, meaning the images and perception often come from media. And so I would say to that, I believe everyone on this panel is exceptional, but I don't believe we are the exception. And I think that's what happens, is that there is a belief that what's seen on television and movies is that's the way black people are, that's the way black women are. And I suspect if we asked everyone on this panel, we could probably name 5, 10, 15 other women who are just like us. And so I think that's a big piece where people also have to examine where are they even getting the perceptions that lead to the stereotypes.
I just basically wanted to make a statement and say it is an honor being in you guys' presence, because it is true black women are depicted as a point of negative in the media. So to see you guys in different shapes, colors, and well-dressed, not showing your skin, it's a real honor just to see that. And I'm just really happy to be here today.
It's an honor to be in your presence. Remember that as well.
So it just makes me feel like academically, whatever road, whatever tough times I go through is basically worth it. It is.
Well, thank you for sharing some of the experience you have had. And I will argue that probably most of these experiences are happening all over the nation. But yet you live in Iowa, and some of you are from Iowa. what are the high marks you can give to Iowa as a state or the community in terms of ethnic relations, race relations? And what are the areas that we have to work, to make it a better community in terms of race relations?
So, I'm from New York, and I got the same thing. My mom was like, there's no black people there, what are you doing? But I still came. For me, especially on our campus, we tend to have a lot of bias incidents, and some of them happen in the community, and some of them are with our own students on campus. And it seems like, from the student perspective, no one's listening to them, but I think people also forget about the staff and faculty of color who are on the campus as well and that interact in the community, and forget that some of the same experiences that our students are facing, it happens to us. Me and my supervisor had crossed the street once and we were called an N-word by someone walking by, and this was on campus. And to have to tell that story to other faculty who are like, oh my God, that happened to you? That would never happen here. No, it's so great here. That's not okay. I understand it was them kind of processing it in their own right because they realized their experience was different. So I really think, as some people have mentioned already on the panel, just really taking the time to listen and not always say things, I think that's important. A lot of times when I go into places and I talk about diversity or microaggressions and things like that, people always say, well, we were the first to vote in interracial marriage, and we voted for Obama, and we are so proactive here, and that's what makes us so great in Iowa. And that's cool, I'm glad all those things happen, but don't think for 1 second that race issues aren't in this state, because they are. And we're here telling you that there are issues going on, whether it's with their students, with their children, with their future children. What's or not, there's still things that need to be worked upon. So yes, I'm glad we're progressive as a state, but we still have things that we need to work on as well.
And I have to say, for me, I kind of stay in my lane being Iowa City. So I can't necessarily speak for the rest of the state. And even when it comes to campus, my colleague Kendra, for example, will have a very different experience because we literally are separated by a river. And so, on the medical side of campus, it can be very different from the other side. So having said that, I have to say I would have had some pleasant surprises, probably because I was expecting the worst. But even when I came for my campus visit, I rented a car and I thought, I'm going to drive out to Target and let's see what happens. So I went to Target and nothing happened and it was okay. I find Iowa City, which I understand is kind of the exception, to be very progressive, very sort of eye-opening, welcoming, but again, I know that there are different experiences, so I certainly don't want to say that that is, the entire experience. And having said that too, I think one of the things I talk about with my colleagues, because a lot of times we talk about white privilege, which is very real. But I think we also have to recognize, as professionals, we have some privilege that other people won't have, which means my experience may not be representative or realistic, because there are going to be some people, when I walk down the hall, oh, it's Dean Wilson, who are going to treat me differently than they may someone else. So I recognize that I could very well be having a different kind of an experience. So I certainly don't want to discount another experience that other people are having.
One thing that I realized being in Iowa is a lot of interracial relationships, and I love that. I see mixed babies all over, and it's like, that is so cool. I don't see that very often, so it's okay, I think that's really cool that people from different races are having children and raising them. And then I had someone that works at Mount Mercy be like, oh, can you help me? Because I don't really know how to do my daughter's hair, and I don't know, asking questions, and that just tells me that they want to do what's best for their child, who is half black and half white, or half black and half Hispanic, whatever it is. But that's one thing that I really enjoyed about coming out here, seeing that there are a lot of interracial relationships.
I guess in my, 5 months now of being here, I, thank God, have not had any bad experiences. I pray that they do not occur, because my experience has been really positive in Iowa. I think that people sometimes look at me like, she doesn't belong here. in the way that I haven't seen her before, or I don't see many people that look like her, but I have yet to feel I was not wanted because I was Black, which I'm thankful for. But I think going from this experience, and hearing the conversation that has happened here, the best thing that anyone in this room could do is take your circle of influence and have a personal conversation with them about the fact that race is still very relevant and that the things that are going on in the news are not made up. St. Louis is not made up. These things are really happening, and while we could debate, the actual occurrences that happened there that led up to Mike Brown being shot, we cannot deny that people of color feel disenfranchised in this country, and that it is based on fact. It is based on things that are happening, like she just said with her husband, 4 months ago. So if we want to move Iowa forward, want to move the creative corridor forward, I think start with your circle of influence and have these tough conversations, because undoubtedly there is someone in your group of friends that thinks they're just making all this up, they're making a big deal out of nothing. So if you could do that, I think that we could make a huge impact in this community.
Although I am from Iowa, I did leave for a little bit, then I came back. And I lived in Virginia for a little while. I actually went to a historically Black college and had a wonderful experience doing that. Growing up in Iowa, I was so used to being the only one. My parents are educators, and so I came from a line of family members in education, and my mom's actually retired, my dad's still in education. But so I knew that people that looked like me could do really, really cool and awesome things. However, when I went to Virginia State, it was culture shock. I was like, oh my gosh, I've never seen so many Black people. But I was just in awe. I loved it everywhere I went, right? So much different, the doctors and the nurses and everywhere. And it was just a rich experience. But one of the things that I missed was the hospitality of Iowans. I just feel like, and I mean that from a community perspective, not from a personal, like having you at their house perspective, but just saying hi and hello, and just that welcoming spirit about, naturally I feel that Iowa has, that a lot of other communities don't. And I didn't realize I missed it until, I didn't realize it was something I enjoyed until it was gone, and I was in a community where it was odd to say hi to somebody that you didn't know. You just saw at a gas station, they say, hello, how are you? And they look at you like, I don't know you. Why are you talking to me? So that was kind of my experience. And then coming back here, actually, I had culture shock again, where I finished at UNI, and I was in an environment where I was the only one in the classroom again. None of the educators or the people around me looked like me, so that was challenging. But it was nice to be able to, to walk anywhere and go anywhere. And generally, for the most part, people speak to you and say hello. And I've heard that from other people that aren't from Iowa. In fact, actually, some family members of mine that have moved to Iowa had to adjust to that. They weren't used to that, and had to kind of adjust to, okay, they don't want anything from me, or they're not somebody that I should know. They're just saying hello. So.
I just want to share a little story. I went to a small town school, small town country folks, so not really all that friendly towards African Americans. I was actually called the N-word my sophomore year of high school. That kind of tore me down a whole lot. I took that opportunity to kind of self-reflect on myself, because I realized that I'm also putting myself out there as the stereotype. So I'm not saying that what the person did was correct, but I'm also saying that you also sometimes look at yourself and say, am I putting myself out there like what they see on television, And so I kind of had to learn how to dress proper, I guess, just kind of dress a little bit more conservative, dress a little bit more professional, just because I feel like when people see the color of my skin, immediately they go with, oh, so you're from the ghetto. It's like, no, I'm actually from Africa. Get it right. But do you guys feel that sometimes you have to think of the image first before? Like, do you feel like you have to put yourself out there as more, I don't even know how to ask this, but do you feel like you have to put up this kind of a persona to kind of let people, to kind of make you seem a little bit more approachable? And then you have to like get more comfortable and kind of show people how you are, or is it more like, I don't know.
So thank you for sharing your story. The first thing that I would like to say is that you're valuable, always. Regardless of how you dress or how you act or whatever, and nobody has the right to put hate speech towards you or anyone in this room based upon how you present yourself. So I want to be very clear about that. You should be able to present yourself to the world in whatever way feels validating to you without feeling like it's your fault. So please remember that. Now, having said that, I think we all learn what's appropriate for certain environments. So in a professional environment, there are certain things that are appropriate as opposed to other environments. And so, to me, what I'm hearing you ask is, do you feel like you have to assimilate?
Yeah, like, do you have to adjust to the room or just?
And I don't think that there, from my perspective, a hard and fast answer to that, because who we are as individuals varies greatly, even within communities of color. And so the answer for me is yes, no, maybe, sometimes. Because I also was raised in Iowa. I was raised predominantly by white lesbian women. And so that influences who I am and the kind of woman I became. And so I feel like who I am is fine in every space I'm in. Also recognizing that we live in a society that has certain expectations about behavior in certain environments. And so it's always a negotiation, I think, regardless of your identity, but because of histories of discrimination and oppression based upon racial identity, based upon gender, sexual orientation, we have to always be aware of those things and how people are going to perceive us. And you have to do a wiggle regularly to figure that out. One of the things that I'm currently trying to do a lot of work on myself, there was a question earlier about handling stereotypes, and something that I think is the biggest challenge for me is the way that I've internalized the ways that I've experienced oppression. So I think, I definitely have experience with overt discrimination, where people are discriminating against me based on identities. But I think the biggest struggle for me is how I've internalized that about myself, and trying to work through that and grow through that, and really remember that I'm not an imposter, and that I've worked hard, and that I am capable of doing the things that I'm able to do, because regularly, as we've heard multiple people say, in the Iowa community, we're often the only one. And that adds another layer of things that we have to consider in addition to doing our jobs, being family members, being friends. And I think that that's something that I want everybody to remember, to take away, is when you are part of a marginalized community in this culture, we have additional work that we have to do just to do our regular jobs, just to be family members, just to be partners, just to be. And that is unfair, but it's also exhausting to have to constantly be aware of the fact that these things exist around you. So the answer is sometimes.
I would say I am Sheila, whether I'm in my sweatpants or if I am wearing my professional attire. If my hair has weave in it or if I'm wearing my natural hair, I am still Sheila.
I was just going to add that the wiggle that Kendra spoke about, thank you. I think everyone does it at some point, right? So think about maybe how you interact with your significant other, and then you go with your friends, or I was just talking to students yesterday about where they sit in the cafeteria and why they sit in those certain spots. You're not going to act the same in any setting. So I don't, as a person of color, as a black female, I understand what you're saying, but realize that the other people around you are also going through that kind of wiggle and kind of figuring out how to assimilate as well, too.
Just a quick addition. I think to answer your question, do I feel like I should or that I have to put on a persona? The answer is yes. In corporate America, all the time. But do I? No. Outside of being appropriate, I am unapologetically Shamika. And I come with color. I come not just color on my skin, but I like to dress in bright colors. And in corporate America, people look at you funny. But I'm gonna wear my orange blazer because that's what I like. I'm still gonna do my work. I'm going to meet expectations, oftentimes exceed expectations, but I'm going to be me.
I think that's a very good point from a corporate America perspective. You certainly there are certain levels of assimilation that we all do. I think we've heard that. But I think one of the important things to mention is that it's a decision that you have to make. You have to make a conscious decision to be you. And understand that because of the world that we live in, because we have to have the Black Women's Symposium, that there are costs for that. So even in a corporate environment, I'm natural. I made the decision to go natural about 4 years ago, which means I don't chemically process my hair. And I was very stressed about going through that process in a very corporate environment, having to wear, I chopped all of my hair off, having to wear a short afro and going through that process. I very seldom wear my hair in an afro in a work environment, just because there's challenges in doing that. You know, I have to make a decision. I'm gonna put it back. Sometimes I do wear it out. Some days I'm like, I'm just gonna do it, whatever. But other days, when when I do wear it out, I get questions about, wow, Yvette, you put all of that in the braid? Or, your hair was in the braid yesterday. How did you get all that in the braid? Or can I touch your hair? Or, and it's real. But, that's what I mean. There are costs that you will have to deal with. And not everyone understands and embraces diversity, and you have to be very mindful of that and understand that. And so you have to make a conscious decision. When I went natural, I made the decision that it was more important for me to wear my natural textured hair and to celebrate that, and for my daughters to be able to see that there's nothing wrong with the way their hair grows up out of their head, than to have to assimilate to an organization who I love and I appreciate, but is not the be-all, end-all for me. So I had to make that decision, and I'm glad that I did. But, there are other decisions that I have to make. I'm very conscious about the color of fingernail polish that I wear. That's a small thing, but, having executive presence when you're interfacing with an executive, a senior leader, is important. And if you have on bright green fingernail polish, they're not going to hear anything that comes out of your mouth. They're going to be looking at your green fingernail polish. So there are certain things that you do have to be mindful of, and understand that there are certain decisions that you have to make, and you have to decide how far you'll go so that you don't lose who you are.
I just want to say, is this on? I just want to say hair is a big deal. It is such a big, and I also was just natural, and I just, got my hair done, so. But it's a huge deal, and like it affects you when people say, oh, I like that hair, so I like this style so much better, and then it's like, oh, well, what about my natural hair? What about Shiva's hair? So it kind of affects you, like, oh, like, so you didn't like how I am naturally, but you appreciate more that I have straight hair that's more like yours. That really affects us, and then it affected me, and like I like it. But I'm gonna go back to my natural hair too. But I don't know what I'm trying to say. But I'm just trying to say, like, hair is like such a big deal for us as Black women. Yeah.
I would just say that within the context that has been presented here, you are you. Be proud. Be accepting of yourself. And then remember, this is my watchword, you're teaching. So, you have to be aware, you have to make decisions, you have to make choices, you have to dance, but you can enjoy that dance within whoever you are choosing to be. And you're young, and you're going to evolve, and you're going to use what you're learning now, what you're struggling with now, to emerge into a fully evolved woman. Black, white, or grizzly gray.
I'll be there. I think you're doing a good job.
I have a question for you, Sheila. As far as like when you went to the private school, I have a daughter, and she's 14, and she goes to school with predominantly white kids. And what advice would you give me to tell her that it's okay for her to feel comfortable? She come home with different stories, but I just want to focus on education, but I don't want it to, I try to just shield her from the racism, but I know I can't. but I just want what's right for her educationally, like your mom did.
Yeah. I would say, and I don't know if I can truly answer your question because my school was very diverse. So like I was, yeah, so if someone here who actually went
Hers
to,
is diverse too,
Okay.
but, you know, I was all she know, but I'm just saying, like, you know, young kids take things and she's just more sensitive with it as far as like, if something happened with me, I can probably take it on my skin and sticker. And I just want to be able to go home and be able to explain to her about different situations that she may go through, you know.
I think and I'll just tell you what happened with me. My mom, she told me, and this is just something you just gotta keep telling your daughter, because the more you tell, even though sometimes we're like, I don't wanna hear it, like it doesn't matter because it's still happening at school, if you continuously tell me, one day I'm gonna get it. And something's gonna click in me that's gonna be like, you know what, my mama told me to be proud and keep my head up. And I don't care what anyone says. I'm gonna walk here and I'm gonna graduate and I'm gonna get my BA and I'm gonna get my master's. I'm gonna be a proud black woman. And so just keep telling her things. And then also show her these women here. We have to see, and that's how I was able to get past what was going on with me. I was able to go and have mentors and see people who were like me, who were successful. And I was like, that's where I wanna be. And if you show her those examples and then you continuously build her support system as well, because after this, believe me, I'm gonna end up asking them to, support me and be my mentor, because it is amazing to be able to be the youngest one here, but have these women here to be my support system and be my mentors, because I continuously need them to keep me going, because after they're gone, it's gonna be me, and I'm gonna have to be that person. So I think she will need to have you continue to tell her that she is worth it, and then you reach out to other people and let her know and give her that support system, and that's all you gotta do, and she's gonna connect that herself. I believe that.
Can I just go to work for a second? This is exactly the reason that we have the academy, because for young people, 14 through freshman through senior, of color, so that they can be together and see that it's fine to be smart and be black, and to expose them to accomplished black people. That's what we do all summer long. And it's necessary. It's absolutely necessary. That's the reason I'm sitting here, because I saw kids in my classes glazed. I'd bring them to my office and we would talk and dialogue, and the eyes are the windows to the soul. Those eyes would, kind of open up. And I'd say, there's something back there. What's all this? And then I learned what it was. Students, young people carry a lot of weight. And your daughter may be among those who is struggling with who she is in whatever environment she's in. My grandson is the same way. A smart little boy who has to constantly be saying, leave me alone. But it's, in a word, what we provide is exposure, positive exposure to African American culture, African American, biracial African. And so you talk to me after we're done, because if she's 14, we need her.
And shameless plug, her program is really, 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 really good.
You had a question a while ago, and we didn't get to it.
It's nice of you to bring it up again. I think I remember it. But I think we as white and black people, we can help one another by being friendly, speaking, like one of you said. And when we're in the store, in that grocery store, I go there a lot, and they are behind the counter, make certain I go to one of them and not necessarily to the white person. I think that's very important. Break that and speak and be friendly to them and thank them like you would, a normal person. But I do think interaction is important. And even when at Mount Mercy, I'm only a volunteer there. But I'll tell you what, I think it's very important that they speak to me as well as I speak to them. Usually I speak first to get them to do it. But I think that's a very important thing to learn, to be friendly and not just to walk by somebody and say nothing. And even if you say good morning or good afternoon, whatever it is, whatever it might be, that there's no response. That kind of does me in.
I would say that in this dialogue that we're having, because, you know, I think so often, you see this on the news a lot, why are they race baiting? It's like people are so afraid to have this kind of a discussion.
Yes.
We can talk about gender, people seem to be even more comfortable talking about issues related to LGBTQ populations. You know, but when it comes to race, let's not talk about it, because somehow if we talk about it, it's wrong or something's going to happen. We have to have these kinds of discussions. And sometimes we have to be uncomfortable, and that's okay.
And one more thing I'd like to add, that young lady expressed her opinion about her husband with that policeman. Well, I'll tell you what, this is what I do when I see them in there, whatever color they are. I try to make a point to say, thank you for all you do. And I've had some of them say, oh, you make me feel so good that you acknowledge me. It's not been easy. So that's an important thing to do, to thank them.
On the essence of time, we're actually really over. But there's still food, and you guys can also talk and amongst yourselves. But I, for one, wanted to thank the panelists. You all are such an inspiration. You're so successful, so educated, and not only your inspiration to Black women, but your inspiration to women of color like myself. And I strive to be in your shoes, and I strive to do as much education and awareness as I can. And I know young women in my shoes are also doing the same. So I want to thank you again for coming and for everything.